Hey y'all. Every time I do my hair like this, it gets super red. Y'all see that? I have another scary story for you guys. And I know I just uploaded one last week, but I told you guys that Tia actually sent me a story. So we're gonna read this shit because I really don't want to wait. I'm only uploading 2 videos this week, so I wanted one of them to be dedicated to something scary, and then the other one was just me rambling about my life, of course, because I don't know how to shut up. I talked so much in that video that I really don't know what to say here. I'm gonna be completely honest with you. I always think it's impossible for me to run out of things to say, but here we are. I think the story is fairly long. It's another story that's on actual paper, so I'm not really sure how long it's gonna take, but there's quite a few pages in here, so I'm going to assume it's gonna take us a hot minute, but I'm gonna read the whole thing right now. No cliffhangers, okay? No cliffhangers this time. And I know a lot of you really want the next part to the other story that I read, so as soon as that is posted on Reddit, I'll read it, don't worry. A lot of you guys love that story, and I'm not really surprised, but it was so different than the other stories that I've read. I don't know, I was expecting like a mixed reaction, but everybody loved it, so we're gonna read it. Again, the story is from Tia. If you guys have never heard any of her other stories, I will have all of them linked down below. They're always absolutely amazing. I'll have her social media linked down below, her YouTube, her Twitter, all that fun stuff. Please go check her out. She's fucking awesome. Show her lots of love. Love you, Tia. But this story is called Frozen in the Headlights. My name is Peyton. I'm 17 years old. I'm from Poolsbo, Washington, and my story takes place from Tuesday, December 13th, 2016 to Saturday, December 17th, 2016. If you have any form of PTSD, please stop listening now. I was, and still am, a junior in high school, and also one of the only kids in my class who still hadn't gotten their driver's license at the time. My best friend Quinn also didn't have her license, so our parents decided to put us in the same driving school. If anyone doesn't know, when you attend driving school, at least in the United States, you must complete 2 parts. The first part is the classroom portion, where you watch safety videos, take tests, that sort of thing. The second part is the driving portion. You and another classmate are put into a vehicle with the driving instructor. The driving instructor is on the passenger side, while one student's in the driver's seat and the other's in the back seat, observing the lesson. These driving times typically last 2 hours. Each student has 1 hour of driving and 1 hour of observing. You're able to schedule these driving times whenever it works best for you and the school, and you must complete at least 10 driving times, so 20 plus hours of driving and observing, before going to get your license. Quinn and I, being best friends and completely comfortable with one another, decided to schedule each other's driving time together. Tuesday, December 16th, 2016 was one of those dates. "Pay!" my best friend yelled as she skipped down our school's hallway to catch up to me. "What's up?" I asked. "Are you excited for tonight?" Why would I be excited? Because after tonight we'll be 2 driving times away from complete freedom. Quinn sighed as she adjusted her backpack on her shoulder. "Yeah, okay. You know I'm not a huge fan of driving. And just because we only have a few driving times left doesn't mean we're going to be getting our licenses right away," I stated as I held the door open for her. When we stepped out into the cold winter atmosphere, goosebumps naturally covered my arms. However, at this moment in time, the goosebumps felt different. If you've ever had a sudden, deep in your gut feeling that something just wasn't right, you know what I'm talking about. I know, but I'm just so excited to be diving into adulthood with my best friend. It'll also be a bonus that we won't have to see Mr. Wyman again, hopefully, for the rest of our lives. Mr. Wyman. Probably the most uptight and by-the-book old man I've ever met in my life, and he just so happened to be our driving instructor. Of course, normal driving schools in the United States offer a plentiful variety of driving instructors you may learn from, and usually each driving time is with a different instructor. Unfortunately, Quinn and I were stuck with him as our instructor for every single time we've had so far. Every single one. I let out a breath and nodded in agreement with her before boarding our bus. Yes, not having our licenses yet meant we still relied on public transportation that wounded our social reputation. It all seemed so important to us back then. I was one of the last stops on our route, so by the time I got home, it was already 2:25, and I only had a few hours to do my homework, shower, and make myself dinner before I had to meet Quinn at the laundromat at 6:30. My parents weren't home, which was never a surprise, but like always, my dad left a note for me on the kitchen table. "Hiya, Penguin. Leftovers are in the fridge for you. Your mother and I have to work late again tonight, so we won't be home until around 11 or so. Drive safe, and tell Quinn your mother and I say hi. Also, don't forget to bundle up. Love always, Daddy-O." My dad's longtime nickname for me never failed to make me smile, even though I was dreading driving later that night, and also because of my upcoming midterms. After reading my dad's note, I rushed through 3 packets worth of chemistry homework, sang my heart out in the shower, and didn't leave until I looked like an old woman, and stuffed partially reheated lasagna in my mouth. I then threw on the first jacket I could find and biked a couple blocks from my house to meet Quinn. When I arrived, she was leaning against the side wall of the laundromat, her arms crossed over her chest. She was wearing the brown and puffy winter coat I'd given her the Christmas before, black yoga pants, and vanilla wafer-colored Ugg boots. Her long dark hair was slicked back into a ponytail with a few strands loose in the front that perfectly framed her heart-shaped face. Her blue eyes flashed with playfulness as I got off my bike and walked towards her. Quinn made a disapproving sound as she approached me. "You're 5 minutes late, Pay. I expected better from you." Her comment made me chuckle, and I nudged my hip against hers before putting my bike on the bike rack. As I began to lock it with my chain, a sudden brightness hit the side of my face, and I had to use my hand to shield my eyes. The light was so close and intense. "Hey, jackass, what's your problem?" my best friend yelled from behind me. I turned my body to see where the light was coming from and who she was yelling at, but just as I did, the light was gone, and the sound of screeching tires filled the air around us. "What the hell?" I exclaimed, standing to get a better view of the parking lot. "Some asshole was shining his high beams at us and staring," Quinn said. I scanned the parking lot again for any sign of a vehicle with their high beams on. All I saw was Mr. Wyman pulling up to us in the driver's ed car. He got out and gave us a short nod as a greeting before moving over to the passenger side of the car. "You ladies ready? Peyton, you're in the driver's seat first." Mr. Wyman, though annoying and intimidating, was probably one of the cutest looking old men I've ever seen. He was about 5'5" in height. His gray and thinning hair was swept over to the side to cover up his bald spot. His brown eyes were surrounded by wrinkles, which made them look soft and friendly, and his pudginess made you want to hug him like a teddy bear. Sadly, he was anything but friendly and huggable. "Miss Salvini, if you do not quit humming, I will take away 3 points from your overall concentration skills." I snickered as I caught view of Quinn in the rearview mirror, secretly flipping Mr. Wyman the bird for his threat about her humming. I enjoyed her humming, actually. We weren't allowed to play music, and if we tried to make small talk, Mr. Wyman would tell us to focus on the road. Driving in total silence for an hour was complete and utter torture. We started with parallel parking, then moved on to 3-point turns, and had to park uphill before I was allowed to coast for the remaining 15 minutes of my time in the driver's seat. Where are we?" Quinn's voice brought me back to reality. I must have spaced out or something while cruising. I hadn't realized, but my time in the driver's seat somehow led us down an empty gravel road. Mr. Wyman had been writing things down in his grading notebook the entire time, so he didn't realize it either until Quinn brought it to his attention as well. "No worries, I know where we are. Just continue on straight, Miss Rethel. This is an old back road that will eventually lead us towards Hood Canal." With that, Mr. Wyman turned his focus back to his papers. Although I was a little nervous because I was driving in unfamiliar territory, Mr. Wyman had yet to be wrong during our driving times. I had to trust he knew what he was doing. The road became rockier as we drove along it, and I had to dodge a few holes and large rocks to keep from damaging the car. We were alone on the road for quite a while. I'd estimate between 10 and 15 minutes, and not a single person or house in sight. It looked like I was going to be the only one driving this time. Ugh, thank goodness. At least there's some type of human life. Quinn had turned around in her seat to look behind us. From the rearview mirror, I could see a set of headlights slowly beginning to approach from behind us. When they got close enough that you could make out the color of the vehicle, Quinn spun back around with a panicked expression on her face. "What's wrong?" I asked, giving Quinn a quick glance over my shoulder. The men in the car," she trailed off for a moment. "It's the same men from the laundromat, the car with the high beams. Mr. Wyman, I think we're being followed." Quinn leaned forward as she spoke her concerns, hugging her arms to her torso. I know she only did that when she was nervous, and her revelation sank some nerves into me too. "Miss Salvini, there's no need to worry or panic. I'm sure it's just a coincidence. Peyton, there should be a road coming up here on the left. Turn there and let these gentlemen pass so Miss Salvini can calm down." I nodded my head in response. Quinn stayed silent in the back. A few seconds later, when the road came up, I took the turn, and the vehicle behind us continued on straight. A wave of relief hit me, and I felt my grip loosen on the steering wheel. We were all able to share a calm and pleasing few seconds. A set of headlights came out from the darkness behind our car, shining a massive amount of light onto our shocked faces. I could make it out now. It was a black SUV of some sort, and they were rapidly gaining on us. The gas pedal suddenly found the floor, and we took off, the SUV following. I didn't know how to act. I didn't know where I was going. Most of all, I didn't know what was going to happen next. "Miss Rethel, slow down this instant. You are going to kill us," Mr. Wyman yelled from beside me. "Slow down." My heart rate was spiraling out of control. I could only focus on how close the lights were and the sound of Quinn's panic crying coming from behind me. If I slowed down, they would get us, whoever they were. But Mr. Wyman didn't give me a choice. He used the teacher's brakes on his side and pulled the emergency brake in between us at the same time, causing the car to come to a complete stop, and we all jolted forward. "What in the hell do you think you were—" Mr. Wyman was cut off when the SUV connected with us. My head smacked against the steering wheel and came back again as I felt the car turning over. We just kept turning and turning before we slammed into something that pushed us back, causing us to land upright. It took a few seconds for me to even move. My ears were ringing, my head was pounding, and my vision was blurry. The SUV hit us so hard that we flipped over onto the side of the road, which turns out was on the top of a steep incline that we inevitably rolled down. Though I was in shock, I sensed we were still in danger and gathered myself. I had to gently remove my seatbelt because it buried into my skin to keep me inside the car. My window was gone, and my door wouldn't open. I had to crawl out, cutting myself a little on the remaining glass. I wiped any clinging glass shards off of me and had to fight the urge to scream when I looked up. I was facing the front of the car. It had a couple dents on the hood, and a lot of the silver paint was scratched from hitting sticks and branches. The front driver's side tire was flat, and the door was dented. Almost all of the windows were shattered except for the windshield. It was only cracked. But it was clear enough for me to see the blood. It was clear enough for me to see Mr. Wyman, with his head resting on the dashboard facing towards me. His eyes were wide open. They were surrounded by black and blue bruising. There was a large gash on the back of his head and blood splattered all over his shirt. He had no life left in him. He was dead. I let out a whimper of despair from the realization. My whimper soon turned into full-blown crying as I feared my best friend of 10 years had shared the same fate. I walked around the car, hesitantly, as I tried to mentally prepare myself for the possibility of a horrific scene. When I caught sight of her, I cried, out of joy. Quinn was sitting directly behind Mr. Wyman, but had been able to open the door. Her legs were hanging over the edge of the seat and she was laying back. A few scratches were on her face, but everything seemed fine other than that. When she heard me, her eyes flew open and she sat up with what I assumed was the same amount of relief that showed on my face. "Oh my gosh, Pay!" Next thing I knew, we were both standing outside of the car and hugging each other like our lives depended on it. Although my head was severely hurting at the time, I paid no attention to it. My best friend and I were alive. We survived a ghastly car accident that could have potentially killed 3 people. "Did you see Mr. Wyman?" "Oh my gosh, I was so scared. I saw him and then I looked over and you weren't in your seat, so I thought you'd been thrown out and I didn't want to look for you. I don't know what I would do." Quinn trailed off, and we both began to bawl our eyes out, our tears forming from sadness and fear. After a few moments of embracing, we heard the sound of a vehicle and multiple voices approaching from up the hill. When Quinn and I looked up, light illuminated 4 large men beginning to make their way down the incline and towards us. That was our cue to run. I took Quinn by the hand without saying a word and motioned us to duck down as we moved behind a tree to give us some cover. We waited a few seconds before booking it into the woods. I remember the ache in my legs from the crash and how it made it difficult to run. I remember the sound of my heartbeat followed by Quinn's panting. I remember the voices fading in and out as they tried to catch us. I remember seeing my steaming breath in the freezing night air. I remember having to pause a few times to help Quinn because her side was really bothering her. I remember that we didn't stop until all light was gone, as were the voices and our energy. Quinn and I found shelter under what looked to be an abandoned bridge, right next to a small river. We knew we couldn't go back to the car. The men would be waiting there. I didn't know what they wanted with us, and we were too tired to keep going anyways. My pounding head was getting the best of me, and Quinn's side was causing her to be in intense pain. We huddled close together that December night to keep each other warm. We'd find help in the morning. What a fantasy that turned out to be. I awoke when sunlight hit my face and unthawed me from my sleep. The good news was that my head wasn't pounding as much as it had been the night before, and daylight was making my presence outside more bearable. Quinn and I were still close to one another, but she must have moved in her sleep because her back was facing me. I tried to nudge her awake. When that didn't work, I tried to shake her. When shaking her didn't work, I tried pushing her. Her cold, pale body slumped over on the ground beside me. "Quinn?" I stuttered. My next memories are a little blurry. I can still feel the hot tears soaking into my cheeks and my hyperventilating breath racking my body as I pulled Quinn close. She was gone. My best friend was gone. She died while I was asleep, and she was never coming back. I laid with her for hours, caressing and cradling her until my arms went numb. Eventually I knew I had to go. I couldn't stay there, and I couldn't bring her with me. My plan was to find help and then lead them back to Quinn's body after I told my story, but after I laid her back down, I found I couldn't even get up. I hadn't noticed it until then, but my legs hadn't moved ever since I'd woken up. Everything was coming at me full force. Waking up from a terrifying event next to your best friend and finding out you can't move your legs. It was a nightmare. I apologize if I put less and less detail as my story goes on, but you have to understand that during this time, I was in and out of a state of shock. Day 1 in my nightmare. I woke up with less of a headache than the night before and found my best friend dead next to me. I also found out I was incapable of moving my lower body. Panic set in as I realized I wouldn't be able to find help. Not only that, but those men could still be out there searching the woods for us, especially now that it was daytime. Unable to cope with all of this stress, I found myself constantly drifting in and out of sleep. By the time I seriously came to, the sun was setting and I was starving. I was almost dehydrated and I was cold. Though I was wearing a jacket, it was only able to keep me warm for so long. I spent my first night truly alone, shivering next to Quinn's corpse, waking up often when I heard any type of movement from the woods behind me. Day 2 in my nightmare. I woke up to a blanket of snow. A storm had passed throughout the night, and apparently I had slept through it. My stomach was aching with hunger, and I still couldn't move my legs. However, I found that my need for water was far stronger than my need for food. It took most of the morning, as I wasn't very fit at the time, to use my upper body strength and crawl over to the river's edge for a drink. Even though the water was freezing, it still felt so good. At least I had a water source. About midday, I began to smell her. I know it's sickening to say. Also shocking as it was cold, and you'd think the winter would slow the decomposition of a body, but within my close proximity, I could still smell her. My best friend was rotting away before my eyes. I couldn't help but look at her and think she was just sleeping. Her colorless lips and cheeks told me otherwise. By nightfall, I couldn't bear the cold any longer. Otherwise, I was sure I'd be the next to go. By this time, my survival instincts kicked in full force. You'd think something was wrong with me. I didn't give a second thought before ripping my best friend's coat from her body to use it for myself. Her boots and socks soon followed. I couldn't bring myself to look at her for the rest of the night, so I slept facing the opposite direction. Day 3 in my nightmare. I woke up to the sound of rustling from behind me. A coyote was beginning to sniff and lick at Quinn's feet. The sight of it made me want to hurl, but I had nothing left in me to give besides defending her. I grabbed a nearby rock and threw it at the beast. Luckily, I scared it off first try. After protecting Quinn, I moved myself back to the river to have another drink. This is when I noticed the smell had gotten worse. It wasn't only because I could smell it. No, it was because when I looked up from drinking, I was facing 4 other coyotes from across the river. They were sniffing the air. It didn't take a genius to figure out what led them here. And it was winter, meaning food was scarce and an immediate priority. If I didn't think fast, Quinn wouldn't be their only targeted prey that day. A couple hours went by and I had to make the heartbreaking decision. I couldn't leave this spot. I had a water source and a clear opening in case somebody was searching for me. I also had partial shelter from the weather. My best friend was gone, but I was still here, and I didn't want to go. It took what little strength I had to pull my weight, along with Quinn's weight, back to the river's edge. I kissed her forehead before sending her off on her final journey and watched as she slowly carried away in the shallow water. Now the water wouldn't attract any other predators, and they also wouldn't be able to degrade her corpse. I only hoped the river saved her a spot so I'd be able to find her later if I eventually got out of the situation alive. I didn't fall asleep until dawn. Day 4 in my nightmare. I was found. Members of a volunteer search party found me late Saturday morning. I was clinging to life and was rushed to the nearest hospital. My parents had reported me missing on Wednesday night, and ever since then they'd been searching for me with police and volunteers. The local canine unit had sniffed our scents out and found the wreck and Mr. Wyman still inside before finding me a day later. When I came to in the hospital, I was told I suffered from a severe concussion from the crash, but because I had fallen asleep without treatment, it resulted in some severe consequences. With a couple months of physical therapy, I'm proud to say that I'm now only partially paralyzed from the waist down, mostly on the right side of my lower body. I can now use a cane to walk. I told everyone my story, from the moment it started at the laundromat. The police believed the men had planned to kidnap me and Quinn. For what reason, they aren't sure, but I have a couple of theories that are too disturbing and too soon to share right now. They also found Quinn a quarter mile from where I had released her. Everything was still intact, and she just looked like she was sleeping. After they performed an autopsy, they let me know she had died from internal bleeding caused by the crash, which explains why her side was bothering her so much. We held a proper funeral for her on Christmas Eve, and losing her, especially in the way that it happened, will haunt me until my time. I know people just share their horrific stories here to let someone know what's going on, stranger or not. In a way, it's like therapy. But me, I wanted to share my story as a warning. If you believe you're ever being followed, alone, with friends, male, female, during the day, at night, on foot, in a car, follow your gut. My gut was telling me to get the hell out of there while Mr. Wyman was yelling in my ear. I should have listened to Quinn when she first pointed out the headlights. I shouldn't have frozen up on my instincts. Not following my gut resulted in Mr. Wyman and Quinn paying the price. I will forever remain frozen in the headlights, and I hope that you will never have to. Tia, I don't understand how the fuck you write these stories. They're so good. I'm sorry for throwing it. She's fine. She's okay. I don't understand how you write these stories. You're such an amazing author. I will also have her books linked down below because she's released a couple books. So if you guys like this story, you'll like the rest of them because they're all fucking amazing. But I hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any other stories you want me to read, please send them to me. I will have my email written down below. Just make sure you put in the title that it's a Reddit scary story or something like that. You can also send them on Twitter and Instagram. I'll make sure to check those. But other than that, I'm gonna go. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye. My throat has never been so fucked in my entire life. I haven't lost my voice yet, which is comforting, but my throat is so dry. I literally had to take 400 sips of Diet Coke. If this video seems choppier than the rest, it's because I literally couldn't get through 2 sentences without being like... I felt like SpongeBob when he was in Sandy's dome and he didn't have any water. Okay, see ya, fuckers.